Hello, this is my MediaClip final project for educating exceptional students. First off, I'm going to start with students with communication disorders and some of the characteristics of them. So one of the main ones is articulation, just how they say words. So substitutions, which is when like a little kid will say wabbit with a W instead of an R. Omissions is when they'll leave out something, so like they'll say app instead of apple. And then additions is when they start adding stuff. So they'll say like twee for tree. They'll just add a W in there as well. So TRW. And then distortion is another one where it didn't come out right, and that can be from like a cleft palate, which is like a split in their lip, or a split in their actual like gum and stuff. Intensity is just how loud they're speaking, and then nasally or not nasally enough is just like how much they're speaking through their nose. Okay, so some of the things we can do to integrate them into the classroom is just be patient with them, listen to them. They are trying to communicate with us, and we need to be understanding. Vary modes of information. They don't always have to speak. Maybe they can write you something instead, and maybe they'll feel more comfortable doing that just because of sometimes they'll have a little bit of issue communicating. Multiple choice answers during lectures is also very important. So like instead of saying, "Hey, what do you think?" Say, "Hey, it's A, B, C, or D. Which one do you think it is?" All right, so students with learning disabilities, this is some of the characteristics. Typically, it's average or above average intelligence, which sometimes you wouldn't get that from reading their work. So sometimes some have dyslexia, which is a reading disability. They're just mixing up letters in their head. Dysgraphia is a lot along the same lines as dyslexia. My sister actually has it. It's a mathematics disability. Just numbers get mixed up in their head. Memory issues. There's 3 types of memories here. Working is the first one, just in the first few seconds. Short term is when you only need to know it for a little bit. And then long term is when it gets stored back in your head. So it's like childhood memories or something like that. And a lot of students with learning disabilities have depression and or anxiety just because they're not being able to do something that they should be able to do. Like it seems very simple. So they just feel depressed. Okay, so some of the things we can do to integrate them into the classroom is just give them extra time. They are trying. Give them extra time to fully read stuff. That way they don't feel rushed. Self-questioning is another thing that they can do. Just let them question themselves. Like give them stuff because they are average or above average intelligence and let them go at it. Graphic organizers is also very important. It gives them what is actually important. Don't just give them all the information. Give them what is important. Visuals, just so they can see it instead of read it. Sometimes that is the difference between learning something and not. It's just some of these will be different. Just give them differences in just from normal things. How you would normally teach a student. This is going to be different, and be okay with that. Okay, students with emotional or behavioral disorders, this is some of the characteristics. This is what you look for: inability to learn, inability to maintain relationships, and inappropriate behaviors. The inability to learn, it's just they're not trying. It seems like they're not trying. They're just an inability. Inability to maintain relationships. You see them like with their best friend, and all of a sudden they're no longer friends with them. Inappropriate behaviors. They're acting out in class. They want attention. Okay, so depression, withdrawn is when they don't get that attention, they feel they withdraw. They don't act out anymore. They want the attention. Okay, physical issues with no cause. It's like, hey, I sprained my shoulder when they didn't actually sprain their shoulder. They're just trying to say it so that they get attention. Okay, so this is some of the integration things that we can do. Peer tutoring and peer mediated learning and cooperative learning. Those are all very similar. Get them in a group. Get them with a tutor that's their peer, because maybe they'll listen to that more than they'll listen to you. They're with people their own age. Maybe that will help them understand what's actually going on in the class, and that way they don't act out. Teach conflict resolution. Teach them how to fully act out something, how to fully work through something. That's very important. Okay, so students with ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, this goes under the IDEA, other health impairment. Okay, so this is some of the characteristics. Inattentive to details. They're just moving too fast. They can't see the details. Cannot pay attention to lectures. They just can't sit still. They're fidgeting. They can't sit still. They can't sustain the mental effort to listen. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. That's just how their brain works. They're moving, a million miles a minute, and they don't have time to sit. Okay, talking excessively is also one of the things. They can't fully get to what they want to say, because as soon as they want to say it, they don't remember it. They just move too fast. This is some of the things we can do to integrate them into the classroom. Flexible seating and periodic breaks. Those are very important. Get them up and moving. That way, when they sit down, they can fully focus on what they need to do. Flexible seating is another one. Get them moving to different parts of the room. It's very important, just so that they don't see the same thing every day. Minimize clutter and noise. Just let them focus. Sometimes I need everything to be completely clean so that I can focus on what I need to do. Reassure and praise them. They're trying. It's very difficult for them to focus, and they're trying, and reassure them so that they know that they're doing something good. Let them hold something, so like a fidget spinner or something, or a pencil. I always had a pencil in my hand. It just helps because they're always fidgeting anyways. Might as well give them something to fidget with so that they no longer have to fidget themselves. Okay, so students with intellectual disabilities is some of the characteristics. Limitations in intellectual functioning. They have a much lower IQ than the average human. So a lot of the issues with like limitations, adaptive behavior, and understanding people, a lot of those limitations are just because they don't understand what's going on. And that's okay, that's not a problem. You just need to be understanding and talk to them. Memory issues, they'll forget stuff because if if they don't think it's important, then they're not going to be able to remember. Okay, they may lack understanding of money. This is a very big issue. They don't understand because they don't remember, or they don't understand the adaptive behavior. So they're like, "Hey, I bought this meal with $5. Should I be able to buy this other thing, like very expensive thing, with $5?" They just don't understand that you need more than that to do that. Okay, so this is some of the things we can integrate them into the classroom with. Quiet workspace. Get it quiet so that they can focus. Repeat concepts throughout the day. If you really want them to learn something, repeat it multiple times. That way, they got it. Hands-on activities. Get them moving with their hands on something. It's very important. I need it too. And I don't even have an intellectual disability. It helps me learn. Breaks are also very important. Give them time so when they sit down, they can focus. It gives their brain a break as well. Step-by-step instructions. Maybe they can't get from point A to point C without point B in there. Their mind just doesn't work that way. Okay, so students with autism, or otherwise known as autism spectrum disorder, this is some of their characteristics. So communication deficits, verbal and nonverbal communication deficits, which makes sense. They also, the next one goes into a social interaction deficiency. They haven't had many social interactions just because either other students don't want to talk to them, or their parents are overprotective, or which is completely understandable. I would be too if I had a student with autism spectrum disorder. Anyways, just because of a lack of social interaction, sometimes they don't understand sarcasm. Very simple thing. But in today's society, sarcasm is everywhere. I talk in a lot of sarcasm myself. Nonverbal cues is also very important, and if you're not around people a lot, then sometimes the nonverbal cues will just go over your head. Okay, so possible behavior issues, when they're not being understood, they'll act out, which I would too. They're not being understood, so they just feel frustrated because they're trying and they can't do it. Okay, so students with autism, this is some of the things we can do to integrate them into the classroom. Set a schedule, daily outline. Give them daily outline. Give them a schedule. It's very, very important. I cannot say this enough, because they need to know what's going to happen next. If they're surprised by anything, then the rest of the day is worthless to you. Breaks are also very important. Get breaks out there. Get them so that they can give their brain a break. Be ready for anything, because you never know what's going to come out of their mind or out of their mouth next. Do role-playing situations like social interaction. Give them key things to do in a social interaction when they don't know what to do. It'll help them win friends. It'll help them just in everyday life. Uh, it'll help them with just with a lot of things. Okay, so students with traumatic brain injuries. This is some of the characteristics of that. Okay, so attention problems, slow processing speed. That makes sense. Their brain got a big hit, and maybe that part of the brain is hurt. Maybe they can't read stuff as fast as they used to. That's okay. Give them time. Sensory overload is another one. Too many things happening at once, so they overload. So there's a rapid mood swing because of that. They go from happy, too many things, and then down, which I completely understand. Speech and language difficulties. That makes sense because their brain took a big hit. Maybe that part of the brain is hurt, so it's very difficult to say things, and maybe they think they're saying it correctly, but they're not. So this is some of the things that we can do to integrate them into the classroom. Give them a planner for memories. That way they don't have to memorize everything. Consistent routine. Structure should be more fluid though. So it should be consistent routine, but give them time, give them breaks so that they can get out of the classroom and gives their brain a break. Give advance warning for any changes because they might be upset by it. Keep classroom quiet so that they can focus on what they need to do. Okay, so students with hearing loss, this is some of the characteristics. Just an inability to hear, either both full or partial intensities or pitch. So maybe they'll hear some, or maybe they don't hear anything. That's the full or partial. Intensities is how loud or how soft you're speaking. Pitch is how high or how low you're speaking. And maybe they just can't hear a certain pitch. I personally have issues with like really high pitch stuff. So I completely understand. May sound muffled when they talk because that's how they hear it. So that's what they're speaking how they hear it. Okay, so an inability to learn from lectures because you're talking to them. They need to see it. They have issues hearing. They need to see it instead. So this is what you can do to integrate them into the classroom. So some sign language phrases. Give them or learn certain ones, or teach them certain ones if they don't know, because that way, like if they need to say restroom real quickly, then they can. Or if you're trying to speak to them, that way they can understand what you're trying to say. Make sure to face a student. It's very, very important because then they can read your lips. Because otherwise, they can't hear you. So how are they going to know what you're saying if they can't read your lips or if you don't use sign language? Okay, so notes are very important. So that way they can read it instead of try to hear it. Microphone and speaker are alternative like learning device. Just make it louder pretty much so that they can hear it better. Okay, so students with visual impairments, this is some of the characteristics. Just squinting, walking into stuff, tunnel vision, or poor hand-eye coordination. Ugh. Just tunnel vision. They may not see things from their side. Walking into stuff, they may not see something in front of them because they're focused on what's in front of them. Tunnel vision. Squinting, they just can't quite see it right. So yeah, poor hand-eye coordination. Just they may drop stuff a lot. And this will be true either full or partial vision. Okay, so this is something that you can do to integrate them into the classroom. Zoom in stuff. Do not change the classroom orientation because they'll walk into it because they can't see it. Move these students closer to front if they can still see, and use larger font, keep things spaced out. That's very important if they can still see some, because then they can actually read it and you don't have to say things to them instead. Speak ambiguously. Don't surprise them is pretty much what I'm meaning by that, because they can't see you. So don't surprise them. Okay, so students with giftedness, this is some of the characteristics. They're going to be bored. They're probably smarter than you. Like that's just how it works. High intellect, academic aptitude, which goes into high intellect. They already know what they're supposed to be learning at a very early age. Creative, they're leaders. They're born leaders. This is what they're made for. Students with giftedness, this is what you can do to integrate them into the classroom. Accelerate the work or compact it. Get rid of all the extra stuff that they already know. Curriculum extension, give them extra stuff. That way they can continue learning. Foster creative behaviors or attitudes. Just give them, just congratulate them when they do something really good, because that's what they need. Okay, so cluster grouping is another one. Give them things together so that they know what they're supposed to do. All right. Well, thank you.